After having finished a brief course on the Great Flood and Noah's Ark, I'm just doing a couple additional short videos to kind of, you might say, tie up some loose ends, um, maybe answer some lingering questions or doubts that may be out there that were either generated from things that I presented or just lingering questions or doubts that people had relative to the authenticity, the historical validity of the Great Flood and Noah's Ark. And in this case today, how was the world repopulated from just these, uh, well, four families, and primarily three, which was the sons of Noah and their wives as they disembarked. Basically, as we'll read in a second, they are told to be fruitful and multiply. And from those six individuals, according to the scripture, the entire earth was repopulated. Now, that includes, of course, and this is where some of the questions rise. Well, how did all the different races come to be if if um, uh, if only these six people are responsible for all of the different cultures of the earth? How did the different skin colors and facial features and all that come to be from just that small genetic pool? Well, I'm going to try to answer at least some of that today in this particular video. So let's take a look at indeed what happened after they left the ark. And of course, here you go. This is from Genesis chapter 9, which is right after they have disembarked and the animals have left the ark. And this is what God says to Noah and his family. Verse 9, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And this is another verse that I think is interesting. The fear of you and the terror of you uh, will be on every beast of the earth and on every bird of the sky, with everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are given. And again, we see this in the natural world, other than those animals that we have successfully domesticated over the centuries and over the millennia. For the most part, the animal kingdom, uh, again, whether they walk, swim, or fly, they are fearful of human beings. And apparently, it was not that way prior to the ark, or at least prior to the curse. Now, this seems to indicate it was prior to the flood, that this is a new condition in terms of the relationship between the animal kingdom and humankind. But in particular, I want to talk about the idea of the sons of Noah and their wives repopulating the earth, and particularly in regard to the diversity that we see in around the world and how that could be. So I'm going to share with you a relatively brief, about a 5-minute video that gives a bit of an explanation in terms of how that may have come to be.
And now the verses that answer directly, are you related to Noah? Genesis 9 describes who comes off the ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And there's the explicit, comprehensive statement, Genesis 9:19. From these, the whole earth was repopulated. People have asked, could Noah and Mrs. Noah have had other children after the flood? Maybe, but I think this verse pretty much refutes that idea. If they had children, well, they couldn't have repopulated, because from these three, the whole earth was repopulated, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I think it rules out that idea. So all of us go back to Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives, 8 people in total. And that immediately raises a question. Again, I want to make sure we're on the same page. If you follow what I say and Okay, I agree with that. Yes, I accept the Bible. But what do you do with the fact that the earth is filled with peoples of different cultures, languages, physical features from skin tone, eye color, hair shape, heights, and so on? How does all that diversity come from just 8 people? Common question. Same thing you could ask about going back to Adam and Eve, but we're thinking about Noah, so let's ask the question and just pick one of these physical features. What shade was Noah and Mrs. Noah's skin? This is, again, stuff we've covered for a long time, but make sure we're all following it here. The answer is fairly straightforward, just basic high school biology will answer it, and in a sense, given how diverse even the United States is, you probably have the answer in your own neighborhood. So just a couple houses down from my own house here locally in Kentucky, there's a family that looks like this, with a dark-skinned dad, light-skinned mom. In biological terms, dad would have lots of melanin. That's what makes skin dark. Mom has less melanin, makes her skin light. And their child here has an intermediate skin tone, not as dark as dad, not as light as mom. How do we understand this genetically, and how would this inform Noah and Mrs. Noah? So if we think of capital letters and lowercase letters as lots of melanin or less melanin in terms of the DNA, so if you're dark-skinned, your DNA will say, make lots of melanin, makes your skin dark. So dad's going to have capital A, capital B to depict his DNA, lots of melanin. Mom, her skin tone is light-skinned, less melanin, so her DNA must be telling her body make less melanin, so lowercase letters, lowercase a, lowercase b. So all they can produce then, the combination of their DNA, in the offspring is a mix of capital letters and lowercase letters. So their offspring, like this young man, is going to have some DNA information for lots of melanin, some DNA information for a little bit of melanin, and so it comes out intermediate. And it doesn't have to be dark-skinned dad, light-skinned mom. You can have a light-skinned dad, dark-skinned mom. The genetics go the same way. Now let's take a step further, and this gets us closer to the situation that I think likely explains Noah and has informed how we depict Noah's family. What if this young man grows up, gets married, and marries someone who looks like him? In other words, who has parents of mixed ethnicity or differing ethnicities, and is also middle brown skin tone. Well, that means then both of them have a mix of uppercase A's, uppercase B's, lowercase b's, a mix of genetic information for lots of melanin, little melanin. And this is just a basic Punnett square from high school biology. If you run this Punnett square out, what you'll find very quickly is this couple can produce every shade of skin under the sun. That's all it takes. How do you get so many different physical features and ethnicities and all that from Noah and Mrs. Noah and their 3 boys and those 3 couples? Very easily. All you need is mixture of DNA, and that'll produce a whole range of diversity in a single generation. And again, it's not just skin tone, it can be eye shape, eye color, every physical feature. It's simplified, but this sort of genetic principle applies. Adam and Eve, Noah and Mrs. Noah, likely had some sort of intermediate skin tone and a mix of features, and could therefore, because they have in their DNA a mix of information, produce a whole diversity after the flood. That's catastrophe, third C. So what happens after the flood? The Bible tells us, if you read on after Genesis 9, Noah and his family come off the ark. Genesis 10, there's a long list of names we tend to skip over because it seems boring and the point doesn't seem obvious at first reading. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. This is just a diagram. I've got Shem's genealogy in blue. You don't have to read the names. It's just, I want you to see it diagrammed out by generation. There's a differing length of Shem's genealogy versus Japheth's in green versus Ham's in pink. That's just what the text depicts. It's all men. We're the ladies. Those are likely sisters and such. If that makes you think, ew, ick, that's the right response today. But God doesn't prohibit it until the Mosaic Law about 1,000 or so years later. And genetically, at this point in time, we're only a few generations removed from Adam and Eve, about 10 or so from, based on Genesis chapter 5. And so if you think of this in biological terms, the reason biologically, if you ask a doctor, why can't I marry my sibling? Not that you'd want to, but if you say, what's biologically the problem with it? They would chalk it up to DNA. DNA mistakes specifically, there's a longer explanation, but the point is, so I have a sister. My DNA mistakes, I inherited some of them from my mom and dad. My sister would have inherited some of the same mistakes, and if we have children, there's a high chance those children get a high concentration of mistakes and you get deformities, if you can even have children. All that is a very different scenario back in Noah's day because few mistakes had accumulated. That's only 10 generations from Adam and Eve. We're now about 180 or so. Lots of time for the curse and the corrupt world to have its effect on our genetics. So Genesis 11 tells us, in a sense, why Genesis 10 exists. The whole earth.
So I hope that that helped explain how the diversity of skin features, facial features, and all that came to be. It's really just a matter of genetics and DNA combinations and so forth. And obviously, what the next step was, and he was about to get into it, and I will try to get into it later, and that is the languages. At the time, of course, there was a common language, and we can trace the languages back to this area of what we would understand to be Mesopotamia in the Middle East, and of course the next account in the scripture is that of the Tower of Babel, where the languages were confused, and then from that point, obviously those with common languages kind of got together and separated themselves. And so then, of course, you had combinations of genetics and so forth. People who spoke the same, they probably began to look the same. And as they began to repopulate in those clusters, we began to see more and more diversity in terms of the what we see today in the world, in terms of, again, whether it be facial features or skin color, et cetera. But we see, of course, in today's world where there are mixed race marriages, we see these combinations occurring again when we don't focus our breeding, so to speak, on those who look exactly like us. We begin to see these combinations and hybrid genetics, so to speak, in terms of features. But anyway, that basically, I think, gives an explanation in terms of uh, how the world was repopulated. We looked earlier in one of my videos on how numerically how it made sense from a population growth standpoint to trace today's world population back to six people, to three families, essentially. And how from a calculation of normal population growth could get us from six people to the population today of multiple billion. Uh, and the fact is actually that trying to do similar arithmetic or mathematics and assume a longer period of time. For example, what is taught in textbooks in terms of when Homo sapiens began, which of course was hundreds of thousands of years before the account of the Ark. That doesn't make as much sense relative to the number of people we have on the earth today. In fact, that normal population growth ratios, et cetera, it makes sense that the population we have today would have been accounted for by beginning with ancestors of just three families. So I hope this has been helpful to you in answering perhaps that question, if that's been one that's been lingering in terms of, okay, well, if I'm to accept this account of Noah's Ark and these the sons and daughters-in-law of Noah beginning the process of repopulating the earth, even if I accept that numerically it makes sense, well, how does it account for the diversity that we see in different features in the different cultures and races and so forth? I hope this gives an explanation to you relative to that. So thanks for watching the video, and I hope you'll look for the next one. God bless you.